Kent, the Garden of England, where the Thames marshes gently ooze up and mingle with the tyres, sofas, plastic chairs. But who's even looking at that, when just over the very first hedge you have this? In plain sight, for decades now, one of Britain's most notorious illegal dumps. Apparently beyond the power of anybody to stop it. Here at Raspberry Hill Farm near Sittingbourne, they're hard at work this week, every week. 2019, and it's pretty much green fields here. But over successive years, almost all of it is excavated, filled with waste, covered over and over again. Councils couldn't stop them, police couldn't stop them, local residents couldn't stop them, the Environment Agency couldn't stop them. The local MP now adding his words to a chorus of despair, because what's happening in Kent is happening across the country.
There's a massive illegal dump in Raspberry Hill. Trucks have been coming in. It's been going on for at least 10 years. I know that the Environment Agency have been investigating it for a long time, but it's not clear to me that they're really set up to handle the challenges around organised crime.
Get in there at ground level and you're suddenly in a huge Martian landscape, the size of the land already dumped on and covered over with soil. And from here you see the nearest village, Iwade, so close, where people will tell you they feel completely abandoned by the authorities, scared to speak out openly. They know this is Britain's new narcotics. Big crime, big money. Talk if you must, but don't show your face. And yet here are you, law-abiding resident, who's complained about this, unable to speak publicly, unable to show your face. Why?
'Cause we're scared.
Why?
You got villagers, whole two villagers, scared of recriminations.
That's mass intimidation.
Yeah, will we be protected by the police? Will the police come and help us? Of course they won't.
We've seen some of the news reports with the family members being done for other things, let's say. So nobody really, even if it goes up on Facebook locally, nobody puts a like on there because of fear of retribution.
I expected that there would be, coordinated action that would go in and close the site down. That seemed to me the obvious outcome. There's massive crime on display, and I didn't think we condoned that sort of activity in this country.
Back in June this year, yet another huge fire at the dump site. This could go on for days on end. Residents say the fires have continued for 5 years.
It got very serious. The police notified us a couple of times during that period to close all your windows and don't breathe in the fumes because it was completely toxic.
But people have good reason not to be seen to be complaining openly. Updated official records show Jacqueline Shilling as the owner of Raspberry Hill Farm from last year. But the previous owner says the Shilling family bought it over a decade ago. Her husband, Michael Shilling, has criminal convictions for illegal dumping and handling of stolen goods and vehicles. Seen here being arrested, their son Harry is now serving a minimum 20 years for smuggling automatic rifles and submachine guns into the UK. As investigative agencies point out, waste crime is part of wider organised crime. We asked Michael and Jacqueline Shilling to respond to our investigation. We've heard nothing from them. So it's not as if the Environment Agency and the police haven't taken action. But all of this just hasn't stopped it. Too much money, too easy to make. Punishments don't fit the crime. The Environment Agency recently said there are 6 large illegal dumping sites in England, like this one in Oxfordshire. Kent's police commissioner greets that figure with undisguised contempt.
I can name 6 in Kent. And so these 6 that they've got nationally are just a part of a much bigger picture where they've talked about having hundreds of similar sites. So there are more problems than I think that they are acknowledging. I think that they need more capability to investigate those sites and take the action that's needed to break the back of this problem.
Half an hour's drive south, Hodes Wood, an ancient forest, a site of special scientific interest, now desecrated by tens of thousands of tons of illegally dumped waste. The Environment Agency knew all about it 5 years ago, but they only closed it down this year.
I think it's agencies passing people around and round and round the system, not enough intelligence being
Passing the
shared.
buck?
Exactly. You've got a council saying it's not our problem, the Environment Agency were therefore not quick enough to act, the police not saying it was their problem either. People don't care whose responsibility it is, they just want someone to grip it.
In the end, it took a campaign by local people and the threat of a legal class action before those we pay to protect the environment here finally did it. And the clear-up is now underway. So after 5 years of what the police commissioner here calls buck passing, the Environment Agency is at last beginning the clear-up. But that's the same Environment Agency that talks about saying the polluter should pay. Well, in this case, the Environment Agency is paying, which means you, the taxpayer, are paying for this, at least £15 million. And to date, not a single criminal has been punished for what they did here, and not one penny of their money recovered to foot the bill. The Environment Agency has made 3 arrests over the Hodeswood dump, but it refused to be interviewed, instead giving us a statement saying,
"We work tirelessly to protect our environment and communities from waste crime through tough enforcement action. Our investigation into those who dumped waste at Hodeswood and other sites in Kent is ongoing, working to bring the perpetrators to justice." It all leaves Kent's wildlife body surveying yet another site damaged by illegal dumping.
There needs to be a formal process that when these things happen, there's a right. This is who you ring. This is how it's dealt with, and this is how it's stopped. It should be a simple process.
Concrete blocks over the entrance within hours, not within months and years.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what it needs to be. Fast, quick actions.
Action at last at Hodeswood. But back near Sittingbourne, people remain trapped in fear and despair.
There are a lot of people in the villages nearby that are gobsmacked that this is allowed to continue and no one is helping them. That sends out a message, especially to young people. Crime pays. You can break the law in such an explicit way that everybody knows about, and you can do it for a decade or more.
There's neighbours that I've spoken to that just have given up. They said, look, nobody does anything. What's the point? And whatever. We just have to put up with it.
So across England, a growing consensus about what has to happen urgently to end an organised crime sector which so often feels untouchable.
We need a single point of contact for waste crime. We need people to be able to share the intelligence, and we need to increase the capability of the organisations involved to investigate these things. That's the way you're going to be able to break the back of this problem. This is a national scandal.
And next week the government's expected to respond to a House of Lords report calling for many of those changes. And the need for change is urgent. Tonight, Channel 4 News can reveal that this nearby site is also an illegal waste dump. It's Basser Hill. It's less than a mile from Raspberry Hill. Another huge plot that has opened up just in the past couple of years. We filmed diggers at work there this week. This new site's very existence, proof that this illegal activity is spreading. Back at the notorious Raspberry Hill farm dump, a kestrel can dive and strike at will. But the law-abiding human community lives on in fear as the criminal empires keep one step ahead.
Well, I'm joined now by the environmental criminal defence lawyer, Dr. Anna Willits, who's given evidence to the House of Lords waste crime inquiry. Anna Willits, it seems scarcely believable that neither the council nor the police nor the Environment Agency have been able to clear this stuff up quicker than they have. Why
Yes,
not?
I'll share your frustrations, and I'm not entirely sure why it's not been cleared up, particularly in the case you're looking at here in Hodeswood. The regulators are aware of this for 5 years, I think. They have powers to close these sites down using restriction notices and restriction orders. So I don't understand why these sites weren't closed down quicker.
Is the Environment Agency fit for purpose? It seems to operate at a snail's pace, both here in Kent, as we've been hearing, but also in Oxford, which has been in the news this week, in the last few weeks. Is it just simply not up to the job?
I wouldn't like to comment on their fit for purposeness, but it does appear the frustration that we're seeing, the speed at which they're acting or not acting. This is real, it's serious organised environmental crime, which is harming the environment that we're all living in. This is not light lightweight matters, and it really needs to be dealt with. So I think if they're not up to the task, we do also have the Joint Unit for Waste Crime, which is a body of, there's 11 parties within the Joint Unit for Waste Crime, including the SFO, the National Crime Agency, the police. And I do feel that, and a lot of the waste industry feels that that is their role. And if the Environment Agency isn't able to deal with these kind of sites, we've seen the people that deal with them, if they're not able to deal with that, that's what the Joint Unit for Waste Crime ought to be doing.
But isn't that the problem? There's too many different agencies. The buck is being passed and it's falling between, to mix my metaphors, it's falling between several different stools. Doesn't there need to be one body that deals with this, maybe extra powers to the Environment Agency or whatever is required to get them to be able to, for example, block off a site before they've done an investigation instead of having to wait?
They do have those powers already, restriction notices and restriction orders.
So why aren't they doing it?
I don't know. And it's a piece of environmental legislation that once a restriction notice is applied for, it has to be heard by a magistrate's court within 72 hours. It's a quick piece of legislation, so it is there and it is able to be used, but I can't answer why it hasn't been used in sites such as Kidlington and Sittingbourne.
I mean, it is extraordinary. It's obviously such a lucrative crime, and yet the state seems to be investing so little to tackle it.
Yeah, I think historically waste crime has not been seen as not the same as actual narcotics. I know this has been referred to as new narcotics, and it's not been perhaps put in the same level as gangland, firearms, weapons. But I think people are starting to realise in government that waste is often the tip of the iceberg. And as Matthew Scott said earlier, behind this you will often see a lot more serious organised waste crime. I wonder if government is now starting to realise that and wake up to it and think it's not just a couple of mattresses in a ditch, but this is real harm to the environment.
What do you estimate in terms of the number of sites, illegal sites like this one that we've seen in Kent and the one in Kidlington? How many of those do you think there are across the country?
Well, as Matthew Scott said earlier, I sat next to him and gave evidence at the House of Lords. He said the same, shares my frustrations. 6 sites were identified as the House of Lords in September. He thinks there's 6 sites alone in Kent, and I'm aware of 6 sites alone in Kent. Kidlington was not listed on the 6 that were provided. We're now aware of sites in Wigan, in Cornwall, in Norfolk. So
in every community?
Yes.
Theory.
So to answer your question, how many there are, I don't know. I'll be honest and admit that sometimes lawyers aren't honest, but I am. I don't know the answer to that. But as Matthew Scott said, I believe there are way more than 6 sites.
And just standing back, what would be the single biggest, most important change that could be done easily to help people who are scared of speaking out to change this?
Yeah, that's difficult. I understand their frustrations because when we've seen the people on your programme already who run these sites, you can see why. There's rifles, there's baseball bats, there's Rottweilers on the gates. If the Joint Unit for Waste Crime can give people comfort to report, and that when they do report, something will be done about it is one thing I think that needs to be done. But also when things are reported, I've reported waste crime myself in the area where I live. And the frustration is, I'm told, well, it's only 3 or 4 category harm. It's not really a problem. And I say, well, it will be if it goes up in flames. And 18 months later, the site goes up in flames and it's become a high-risk site. So that's frustration. I think for people to feel that if they do report it, something actually will be done would be very helpful.
Anna Willits, thank you very much for joining us.